X started out as an experiment in doing 3D on the Game Boy. And the Game Boy wasn't out in the West at that point. Jez-san, the boss at Argonaut Software, he'd wangled a hacked together development kit for it. And so I started knocking up a 3D engine and using wireframe and that sort of technology. And it was going really quite well. And then at a CES, the old electronics shows, Jez was showing it around lots of people. It's the kind of thing he does, and he showed it to a number of companies, and eventually one of the people he showed it to was Nintendo. Nintendo recognised the fact that no one else had managed to do 3D on the Game Boy, and no one even thought it could be done, Nintendo especially, and they thought it was just like a 2D machine, and it was designed to be like that. And Nintendo basically flew us out the next week to discuss what to do, to discuss how to take this further, because they wanted to show that the Game Boy could do more than just 2D. And that's when I first came over to Japan. I was like, I was given about 2 weeks' notice. And I said, well, in 2 weeks, Jez said, in 2 weeks you're going to Japan. And I was like, where's that? And so, anyway, I came over and I was like I must have been 18 at the time. Pretty young and naive and wet behind the ears. And we went to Nintendo. It was big, first time I've ever been to like a massive office like that, huge. It was in the offices they used to be in Tokaido. And I was in this room with it was me, Jez, and Tony Harmon, the Nintendo America guy. And he was pretty young at the time as well. I think he was like 24, 25, and even Jez was probably like 23, and I was like 18. So like real young, group there. And then troop in like 30 Nintendo people. Come in and just line the other side of the table, and they're all like 30 something people, and like Miyamoto was there, and I didn't know who he was at the time, and probably other people like Takeda probably was there, and all kinds of fairly high up people, and they said, well, show us what you got. And we showed them the Game Boy demo that I've knocked up, which had like 3D wireframe and scaled sprites and all kinds of weird stuff in it. And so Nintendo was suitably impressed by that, and they showed us a prototype of the Super Nintendo, which we didn't know about at that time, and no one knew about at the time, outside of Nintendo. And it was like a sort of hacked together sort of machine, and it had like a very early ROM of like Super Mario World plugged in the top of it. And then they showed us Pilot Wings, and for Pilot Wings they really wanted to develop a 3D technology for it, and Jez came up with the idea to develop a 3D chip to work with it, and that ended up being the FX chip. And while I was making X, the Super FX chip, the hardware side was being developed in parallel, and by the time I finished this, Star Fox, the Star Fox project started, and it was just like perfect time, so I switched onto the Star Fox project, and they just got the first prototype of the chip to use, and they didn't have a game or anything. It was, the game was based on an old Argonaut game called Star Glider. And so we started developing the game as a Star Glider 3 for the Super Famicom. Yes, X was probably the first game that was released from me. There was a cassette, like a ROM. I think when this came out in Japan, I was back in England for the release date, and which is a real shame. But when I came back, I was really happy because they had TV advertising for it in Japan.
ゲームボーイファンの諸君、元気かな？今日はゲームボーイポリゴン X という少々厄介なソフトを紹介しよう。君は 3D 空間シミュレーションという言葉をご存知かな？この高度なテクニックによってリアルな3次元感覚を初めて実現したアクションゲーム。それが X だ X だ X マニアの方だけにおすすめする。
With Star Fox, though, it's much more exciting, because it was worldwide. So the like for the winter, I think it was the Winter CS. I think they showed Star Fox, and they had like a massive dome and everything, and lasers and all kinds of stuff. And that was just out of this world, you know. That was just amazing. So. I think I remember at the time Nintendo showed me a similar video at the time, because I didn't actually get to go to the show directly, and I was amazed at the amount of effort they'd put in on the stand. I believe it was like the major thing for that show. I mean, they had the actual R-wings flying around. What about that? It made it very much like the old Atari Star Wars, didn't they? I suppose that's the kind of look they were trying to go for. That's a great game, by the way, that old Atari Star Wars. It's quite amazing, isn't it? They don't do anything like this nowadays, do they? One thing I really learned at Nintendo, one really, really important rule, or law, I suppose, is never to get attached to anything too much. Because Nintendo will, or Miyamoto-san will basically cut stuff completely, and doesn't bat an eyelid at how much work went into it or whatever. And it's not like in whole games even as such. Even parts of the game, you know, you might spend a lot of time developing one particular idea, you know, and if it doesn't work, then, you know, just cut it out. That's the rule. And Star Fox 2 was unfortunately a victim of that. Star Fox 2, the game, it was an interesting extension to Star Fox 1, and we went through so many idea iterations and stuff, and put lots of stuff in there. And at the end of the day, because of the incoming, you know, Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1 was out by then as well, you know, and the Saturn, and the feeling within Nintendo was they didn't want to be shown up with their Super FX chip 3D. You know, when Sony and Sega have these, like, you know, much nicer, you know, full polygon 3D, you know, machines out there, and so Miyamoto-san made the decision then, let's cut it and use elements later on in other games, and a lot of the elements from that went into Mario 64. You know, a lot of the platforming elements. In Star Fox 2, there were platforming elements, you know, with you as a little robot, and you walk around and jump and things, and, you know, switches and that kind of thing. And there was a lot of play with the camera and stuff. And the programmers from that went on to develop Mario 64 with those ideas in mind. And also a lot of the game ideas, you know, the sort of Star Foxy ideas went into the Nintendo 64 in Star Fox. And eventually the actual strategy side of Star Fox 2 went into Star Fox Command. So it all got recycled eventually.